Welcome to Learn at Home with VIA. I'm Mrs. Smith from Southern Tioga School District, and today we'll be talking about the future of cars and careers in AI. I thought it would be fun to have my daughter, Claire, interview me about these topics and to share it with you. So let's get started.
Mrs. Smith, let's start with some background info on you. What do you teach and what did you study in college?
Well, I currently teach the gifted program at Southern Tioga. It's K to 12, so I get to work with kids in kindergarten all the way up to seniors in high school. And I get to do a lot of fun, kind of innovative STEM type things. We do a lot of computer science and, I just try to work in a lot of extra, enrichment type opportunities into their schedule. But I actually studied in college. Before I became a teacher, I was an engineer. So I went to college for engineering. I studied electrical engineering. And then I was an engineer for about 12 years. I worked in the HVAC, which is like heating and air conditioning. I worked in that industry. So, yeah, I had a great career there and then decided to become a teacher.
Very nice. Okay. So as an engineer, what do you think about self-driving cars?
Self-driving cars. So as an engineer, I am super excited and interested in self-driving cars. I think the technology and the engineering that goes into developing these cars is so interesting. And, certainly something that even just in my life, when I was your age, Claire, I never would have thought of self-driving cars as a reality. But now, by the time you're 16 and driving, it could be a real possibility. So, as an engineer, I'm excited about it, but as a mom and as a driver, it makes me a little nervous,
I totally understand you there.
Yeah. I think when you really think about trusting technology and you think about how many times your phone lets you down or your computer crashes, and just how frustrating that is, imagine that happening, but you're in a car and you're moving at 75 miles an hour. Then that's a very serious issue, if the technology fails. So I think while I'm excited about the technology, I'm also cautious and interested to see how the different systems that we live in are going to adapt and adjust to the technology.
That is very understandable. What types of self-driving cars are available now as we speak?
So I've been doing some research on this, and in the industry, they've identified 5 levels of self-driving cars. Well, actually 6 if you count 0. So level 0 is like an old car that literally has no automation whatsoever.
That doesn't sound very charming.
No. But then there's level 1 and level 2 cars that include things like speed control, when you put it in speed control. There's cars that have automatic braking. So if they sense something in front of the car, they will automatically, brake without the driver having to brake. There's cars in level 1 and 2 that have sensors so that if you're driving on a highway, how there's lanes on a highway.
Of course.
That it'll help keep the car kind of in that lane so that you're not, veering into another lane. So that's all kind of level 1, level 2. Level 3 types of cars, that would be like the cars that are, that Tesla calls them, they can put them in autopilot mode. And so that means that the car can pretty much drive itself with little interaction from the driver, but it still requires that a driver be present and, start the car and, kind of get it going. But for the most part, you can kind of check out a little bit while you're driving and the car takes over. Now those are dangerous, because there's been so many cases of people completely, falling asleep or, not paying attention. And then, something terrible happens and they crash. So that's level 3. That's out there right now.
So when you're in a level 3 car, you still have to be cautious of where the car is going.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Level 3 cars still require, the driver is still the main person, the main, thing that's in control of the vehicle. So even though the car might be making some decisions and driving on its own, the person is still ultimately responsible for what that car does.
Very nice. Okay, what will be available in 5 to 10, even 20 years from now?
So that's where the level 4 and the level 5 cars come in. So these are all things that they're testing and they're working on now. But level 4 and 5 cars are, level 4 is a car that is able to completely drive itself
That's interesting.
in almost all conditions. So level 4 still would require some human interaction if, conditions got worse, or if it was, there's still some reliance on human decision making there. If, say, all of a sudden there's a hailstorm or, something that the car wasn't able to predict. Level 5 cars is the kind of the ultimate, the ultimate goal. And those are cars that are completely autonomous. They would require zero human interaction to be able to work and make all correct decisions, and that they would operate in any type of environment, any conditions, any, weather, any road conditions whatsoever.
That takes a lot of programming. Do they even have steering wheels inside?
No, I believe the goal for level 5 car would be there would be no steering wheel, really no way for humans to interact with the functioning of the vehicle. So I mean, again, that's super exciting, but it's also kind of scary to think about, right?
Yeah, like you're putting your whole life on technology, trusting every single bit of it. So what technology is needed to create these level 4 and 5 cars?
So all of the cars, even, the level, 2s, level 1s and 2s, they use some type of computer, interface, right? They're using some sort of sensors, and then the computer's making a decision based on what that sensor is telling it. But when you get into the level 4 and 5 cars, they're really relying on what we call artificial intelligence and machine learning. So I don't know, have you heard of artificial intelligence before? Do you know what that is?
I don't really know about it. I've heard the words before, but why don't you just go ahead and explain it?
Okay, so artificial intelligence is basically when a computer makes a decision for you. Okay. So a great example is, there's tons of artificial intelligence built into your smartphone, the Alexa, or Siri. If you ask it questions, it's making decisions and providing you feedback based on, your interaction, your question. So artificial intelligence, in the simplest form is just kind of computer decision making.
Oh.
Now, machine learning is kind of the next level of artificial intelligence, and that's where the computer is actually learning based on its decisions that it's making.
Yes.
And then it's using that learning to then inform future decisions. So that's something very human. That's something that we do automatically as humans. Think back to when you learned how to walk, like if you watch a baby learn how to walk or crawl, they're trying different things. They're making decisions. They're pulling themselves up. They're falling down. But then they learn based on those, consequences and successes. They learn, and then they, their brain grows, and then you gain the ability and the skill to be able to start to walk. So it's the same thing with computers. So the big thing with machine learning is it requires a lot of training. So again, think of it as raising babies or training animals. You have to give the computer just a ton of information, a ton of data, and allow the computer to make a lot of decisions, and then teach the computer which decisions were the right decisions and the wrong decisions.
Oh.
And until eventually the computer is able to make those determinations itself. So it's really, really interesting. It's really an exciting field. And it really is going to change not only, with autonomous vehicles, with self-driving cars, but it's going to change the way that we do work in a lot of different ways.
Okay, well, that was very interesting. But I have a couple more questions for you.
Sure.
Who is making all of this this amazing technology? And what are some careers in AI and machine learning?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Because this industry is fairly new. It's certainly, back 15 years ago when I was in engineering school, we were not talking about artificial intelligence and machine learning. It certainly had started, but it wasn't, as prominent of a topic as it is today. So there has been just a huge growth in that industry and the types of job opportunities available. So obviously the first type of career path that you think of is programming, software engineers, software developers, programmers, coders. There is a ton of need for those, those types of careers. But there's also a lot of other career paths that you can be involved in this technology and involved in the companies that are making the technology without being a software engineer or a programmer yourself.
That's cool.
Yeah, so I think some of the examples would be, there's a big industry right now in user interface and experience design.
Yes.
So what that means is everything from, using your cell phone to, using Alexa or, using any, piece of technology. There is somebody who at that company is in charge of how that interaction works and how easy it is for users to use the technology. So think about that in these self-driving cars. That's going to be a big part of their design, is how user-friendly it is for people to be able to use. So that's kind of a really cool, kind of fairly new career because of AI and a lot of the technology that's out there. But there's also, there's quality control people. There's people who are testing the software and, even testing the cars. I think that's cool. Yeah, that could be a really fun job, to be somebody who is in these cars and, with all the right safety gear and everything, but actually test driving them. And Uber, in fact, a couple of years ago, they were using Uber drivers to test their self-driving cars, which is really interesting. But then there's also people in marketing. Marketing is, the people that kind of set up how the product is going to be sold and, all the data on who's using it and how they're using it. So that's a big part of these companies. Sales, obviously, they need people to sell these products and this technology. And you have to remember too. So when we think about self-driving cars and the technology that goes into it, we're not just talking about a company like Tesla who is physically making a car that's driving itself. There are a ton of companies that are being created and have been created to support the technology going into those cars. So the sensors that they're using.
Yes. There's a lot of sensors in those cars.
Yes. So they use radar. They use this thing called LiDAR that is like a constantly spinning laser radar. So there's companies that are making those pieces of technology. There are companies that are focusing on just really small parts of self-driving cars. So this one company that I was reading about, they're focused solely on the programming and the machine learning and the AI behind how to merge into and out of traffic. So merging into and out of traffic, that means like if you get on, say there's a highway and there's all these cars, driving.
A lot of cars on a highway.
Right. Yep. And then you come on the on-ramp and you want to get into the highway. Yeah. That's called merging, right? So for somebody who, had to learn how to drive, like that can be a very stressful thing. And you'll see that in a couple of years when you're driving.
I'm not quite 16 yet, Mom.
No, I know. But learning how to merge into traffic it's a big part of learning how to drive. And it's difficult for people to learn. So imagine how difficult it is to teach a computer how to do that.
That would be very hard in my case.
So this company is just focusing on that one piece of self-driving cars. So that's kind of interesting too. So there's all these companies surrounding the industry of self-driving cars that are popping up and creating a ton of career and job opportunities.
Oh.
Yeah. So I think it's the important message here is you don't have to be somebody who wants to go to college for software engineering, which it's a great career path, and I would suggest it for anyone of you who has the interest. And you'll be able to get a great job, but there's a lot of other ways to get into this industry and be close to this technology without being a software engineer.
Oh.
So I think another kind of important message too is that in the past 20 years or so, the technology industry itself has kind of completely changed the rule book on whether or not you have to go to college.
So, technology is getting bigger and growing.
It is, yeah, it's growing, and it's opening up doors for people who do not want to go to college or can't afford to go to college. So with programming specifically, being the institutions and the educational opportunities to learn programming are basically available to anybody. So you don't have to go to a 4-year college anymore to learn programming. Back when I went to college, if you wanted to learn programming, you had to go to college to learn programming. That's where they taught you how to program.
But now you don't have to?
No, you can learn it yourself online. You can go to boot camps. There's tons of places across the world that offer, 9-week boot camps, and they teach you how to code. So there's so many different ways and avenues to kind of break into the technology industry that I think are making it really accessible to a whole population of people that may never have gone into that field before. So I think that's really exciting, and that's particularly exciting for me as a teacher, because now I can advise students that you don't necessarily have to pay for a 4-year college degree to be able to break into an exciting industry like technology and like AI. So it's really kind of changed the landscape on what types of careers and jobs you can get without a college degree.
That is very interesting. So I have one last question for you. Do you think you have to live in California or in New York City to have these kinds of different careers?
So that's a really good question, because traditionally, and even up until today, that has been mostly true. Most of the companies that are working on this technology are in a part of California called Silicon Valley.
Yes.
And so it's long been the norm that if you want to work in this type of field, you have to move there, you have to live there, or in New York City, where there's tons of tech companies, or even a city like Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh has become a tech hub city. But I firmly believe, and I hope that one of the positive outcomes from this whole COVID-19 pandemic is going to be that we as a society realize that your physical location and where you choose to live does not have to preclude you from certain types of careers or being in a certain industry.
I would really like that.
Yeah, so I think it's really important to recognize that, right now, a lot of companies and employees have been forced to work remotely.
Mm-hmm.
And while that has, created some obstacles and some struggles, I'm really hopeful that at the end of all of this, companies will realize that they can still function with remote employees. And because what that does is that opens up opportunities for, kids like you growing up in rural, small town, Pennsylvania, to be able to, be working on AI for automated, cars, for self-driving cars for a company in San Francisco, where before you would have never had that opportunity without having to pick up and move all the way to San Francisco. So I'm super excited for the possibility of, remote work kind of changing who and where and how people can get into industries, like technology and like self-driving cars. Just because, as a mom, as a teacher, and as an engineer, I hate to think that, choosing to live in a rural area or, choosing to stay where you grew up, would, limit your opportunities, to be involved in a high tech career, especially in the year 2020.
Yeah.
We're an extremely connected society. So I think it's time that we realize, that talent, and technology talent especially can come from all corners of the world, and you don't have to live in a certain city in order to be a really important contributing member of that industry.
That is really amazing. And I hope that is true because I love technology and computer programming, but I also like where I live. So I really hope that does come true. Thank you for joining with me, Engineer Smith, and thank you for watching on Learn at Home with VIA. I hope you enjoy the following program after this.